So I wanted to talk a little bit about a show that I started watching years ago, and I really, really enjoy. And recently, the community has been quite divided about it. Lots of controversies going on about the direction of the show, etc., etc. We've all heard this before. See Star Wars, see Marvel, see DC, see any big franchise that has a lot of passionate fans, whether it be negative or positive about it. You got that kind of controversy, but I wanted to talk a little bit about this instance and kind of just see, what's going on, why it's happening, and where do we go from here? So the show's called RWBY, spelled RWBY. It's a show created by a creator named Monty I can probably leave some links in the descriptions of the video to that. So I'm not going to really go too deeply into it. But for any of you who know the show, the show has really thrived off of this really stylistic anime action fairy tale kind of aesthetic with really cool like weaponized, combat, this martial arts style, very very rhythmic, very choreography heavy. Just it's nuts. It's really nuts. Anyone who's seen it knows knows what we're talking about. We all saw the red trailer, and I think all of us really were floored when we saw that. But what's going on with the show? Well, to put simply, it's getting big, and I think it's going through some growing pains. We're on volume 5. That's the last volume that came out. They call them volumes instead of chapters or seasons, but it's all the same. They're on season 5. And for the most part, through season 1 through 3, this very small, devout, very loyal fan base has, for the most part, agreed with everything on the seasons. Of course, there was always, very civil debate, minor disagreements with the show from here to there. Season 3 was a little bit more divisive. Some people didn't like the tone. They didn't like that it was getting a little bit more serious, a little bit more plot driven. While a lot of these still actions still remained, that's what kind of kept the fandom together. It still was the show that everyone really enjoyed, and everyone still really loved it. But also with getting big, what's happening is that opinions are starting to become more diversified. And this was really bound to happen. With any kind of show, it gets larger and larger, and you have more people with a larger sample size. You have people who are going to dislike it more fiercely, people who are going to like it more fiercely. This show has gone international. It's big in Japan, and it's got its own video game. It's got a huge line of merchandise, a manga, a light novel. It's got a spot in a very popular gaming franchise, Blaze Blue, which is crossing over with other popular franchises like Persona. So it's getting a lot of eyes are on this franchise. It's not a small IP, and that's kind of leading me to my next point here is that this is not this is not the underdog. It's not an up and starter. It's not it's not any of those things. I think that this show is a lot bigger than people are treating it like. Both people who love the direction that it's going in and people who dislike it. And I'm just here to talk about really just the facts of the matter. I will mention my own opinion about the show, but it's really just kind of stepping back and looking at it from the outside in. Because I've been on the inside for, since it came out. There have been some talks recently about the rightness or the wrongness of certain people and how far they should go in criticizing the show, how harshly. A lot of people use the word hate, which I think is a strongly overused word nowadays, but I'll try not to go too far off the on the tangent. The This is what I would like to mention on that. People are going to be critical. Um, I think that for the most part, Rooster Teeth with RWBY, this show, Rooster Teeth is the company that makes this show, has pretty much had their training wheels on. And what I mean by that is their fandom shared this symbiotic relationship with them where they would take feedback, they take criticism, they would adapt it. They would really the community was so small that they really relied heavily. They leaned on that community a lot in its early inception. As any show that's getting started that you don't know if it's going to take off, you have to do that. But now this show is becoming big enough to where it can rest on its own laurels. It can become big off its own pop culture hype. It can start appealing to a more generalized fan base, not necessarily the small exclusive devout fans that really brought the show to this point. It doesn't have to cater to that fandom anymore. Now, whether it should, whether it's right or it's wrong, that's a whole nother thing. I mean, the Star Wars community has felt a sense of betrayal. The DC Cinematic Universe devout fans have also felt a sense of betrayal um, to a certain extent because the universes have taken a turn to become more generally accepted. Um, and sometimes that causes it to be more controversial because once again, you increase the sample size of people watching the movies and you have more kinds of extreme opinions about it. All in all, more people are probably watching those universes. And at the end of the day, they're probably making more money and getting more buzz, more interactions online, more video watches, more clicks, all those kind of things in the end of the day. But back to the matter at hand, I think that, like I said, they've had their training wheels on. They've really been coddled by their fan base. And I think that a lot of the fans are upset that there's some harsh criticism out there. Now, when it comes to criticism, I'll- I want to say first that the criticism isn't, a lot of it isn't directed directly at Miles and Carrie. And what I mean by that is Reddit posts, Twitter threads that don't mention or include Miles and Carrie by their profile name in the actual tweet. They don't tag them. Um, Other social medias in forms of talking about it online really only stay in that conversation. Miles and Carrie won't see, I'd say 90% of that. And I think as a creator, it's kind of your responsibility to filter what you see and what you don't. I also think that it is your responsibility to take the criticism and to do what you will with it. Listening to it, I think, is most of the time in your better judgment. But back to kind of the fandom and how they've been treating people who've been criticizing harshly, I feel like they are trying to coddle, trying to shelter Miles and Carrie as well as the rest of the Rooster Teeth team. We talk a lot about Miles and Carrie, but they're not the only ones on the team. There's animators, writers, and editors that are all taking a part in making RWBY what it is. So they shouldn't have to bear the brunt of the praise or the burden of criticism. I think people are well within their rights to criticize the show. They're making a profit off of this, and those profits I don't feel like I'd be too incorrect for saying this, are increasing. The show is becoming bigger. More people are watching it. More people are buying the merchandise. This, like I said, it's not an up-and-comer. It's not the underdog. It's not a passion project anymore. It doesn't it doesn't get to have its cake and eat it too. We can't continue to treat Miles and Carrie and the rest of the Rooster Teeth team like they can't handle the criticisms, even if it never gets to them, even if they never hear it. And don't get me wrong, I don't think it's a good idea to be mean, to be rude. I think those people are obnoxious. I think those people are making it less fun for other people online, and I think that is just kind of an overall kind of a sucky thing to do. But they're not slandering, they're not threatening, they're not doing anything legally or morally reprehensible. And therefore, I think that we need to start letting this fandom become like other fandoms. I mean, they want to take Ruby. Rooster Teeth wants to take Ruby to the moon when it comes to profits and hype and pop culture and all that. They want it to be as big as it can be. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know, but it's happening. And if they want to do that, they also have to expect some of these things. It's just gonna happen. But anyway, I talked about that a little bit too much. So, but basically, in the end of the day, it's like critical people, harsh people, rude people are gonna be there, and it's like, you can't, you can't, you can't rein in all the fans and have them all be on the same page as the fandom keeps growing at an exponential rate. It's just you can't do that. You can't expect everyone to all fit in this tight knit group. It's not tight knit anymore. It's too big for that. And to a certain extent, this brings me to my next point, is that RWBY is really too big to necessarily have to cater to its original small and tight knit audience. And as far as what we have to do positively for the show is to, and I hate saying it because it sounds kind of defeatist sometimes, but it's just to vote with your money. That is what's driving a lot of the decisions. They've been coming out with these episodes quite quickly. You have a year or less and there's a new season. One thing that I've noticed is that, with Netflix television shows, for instance, there is maybe a month after a season ends, a season confirmation. Season two confirmed. They'll leak it or they'll give it to a website, a blog site, a journalist of some kind. They'll give them a tip. Hey, we're confirming that there's going to be another season, but they will not say when it is. They might even say what quarter, they might even say what year it'll be, but there's just a confirmation. Whereas I feel that not too long after these volumes are ending in RWBY, they're giving, month to even date confirmations, making their own schedule more difficult for them. They need to let whatever amount of time pass before that they need to pass before they make or release the next volume. I'll go ahead and tell you my stance on the show. I think that the show has taken an objective decline in overall quality. This isn't just an opinion piece. I'm not going to go too far into it. I think there are plenty of videos that lay out very articulately the problems with the show from an editing standpoint, from a writing standpoint, from an animation standpoint. There are some objective standards of writing, animating, and editing skills that I think are lacking. Now, if you want to, play the straw man argument, or you want to say, you want to point at the person who's criticizing it, which is myself. I have no animation skills. I have limited writing skills, Miles and Carey are probably better writers than me, objectively speaking. They've had more time, more experience doing so. But the but the illustration has come up a few times that you don't have to be a chef to know what good food tastes like. And there's a reason why these videos that are harshly criticizing the show are blowing up. That they're getting likes, they're getting shares. They are they're getting popular. A lot of people believe that. And you can't ignore those people. I mean, they're there for a reason. Some people say that harsh criticism is becoming cool. Well, perhaps, perhaps that's the case. You know, perhaps it's cool to crap on the show, but it doesn't make it any less true. I mean, it stinks when people have a smug attitude about it, but it makes it more hurtful, especially if you like the show or if you create the show. It doesn't sit well. But once again, it's everyone's responsibility with a fandom and an IP this big to filter what they take in. That includes Miles and Carey, who are profiting off of it. As customers, we're spending our money on it. So, I mean, it's really up to you. If you want to get on Twitter and, start going back and forth with trolls and whatnot, and it ruffles your feathers and you get upset about it, well, I mean, that's just time that you're wasting. Not to mention, I mean, you spent the money on the show. I mean, if you like it or you dislike it, it's really up to you. But I'm getting off track again. Um, just, vote with your money. A lot of people feel very sentimental about Miles and Carey and the crew and Ruby and all that sort of things. And there's a certain level of sentiment that goes along with any fandom, but particularly this fandom, which really started from the bottom, and people really latched onto it and really carried it on their backs until it got to this point. So they feel they have a horse in the race with this show, and it stinks to believe that the show will become generalized or it'll start catering to the lowest common denominator to get the general consensus you know, to bring it to that pop culture status. And it's just an inevitability. It's an inevitability. We we all want the show to get big. We want the show to become popular, but I don't think we ever really considered what would happen when that came to pass. And now it's happening and it's going through some growing pains like I mentioned earlier. So, but with your money, if you don't like where the show is going, they're gonna have to start treating RWBY like the big boy show that it is. You gotta make a hard play if you really don't like the way that it's going. If you keep on feeding Rooster Teeth and its shareholders and the executives that work for the company, if you keep feeding them money, like anything, they're just gonna consider that you do like where the show is going. And no amount of ranting in these closed little siloed off Reddit threads and Twitter threads are going to get these people to do anything different. And we just have to realize that. Start treating it like an actual show, like an anime, like Avatar, The Last Airbender, and Legend of Korra. We have to start treating it like these other shows that are in its category. It's not in its own category anymore. Rooster Teeth has made that abundantly clear. So anyway, thank you guys for listening, and I will catch y'all later. Bye.